Right, so who are the brothers Grimm? Chapter 10, Happily Ever After. The Grimms continued to work on their dictionary, but made very little progress. It was such a huge job. Jacob concentrated on words beginning with A through C, while William worked only on the letter D. Work on the dictionary wasn't much fun, as collecting fairy tales had been years earlier. Jacob was becoming frustrated with William. William wasn't as precise with his work as Jacob was, and he often borrowed books from Jacob's study without returning them. Even when William did return the books, Jacob complained that William was making too much noise by constantly opening and shutting the doors. Finally, in 1854, 16 years after starting the dictionary, they published the first volume, A through Beer Milk. They hadn't even gotten all the words starting with B. The brothers realized that they would never finish the dictionary in their lifetimes. In 1859, William and his family took a vacation to Elbe River. While on the trip, William became very sick. When he returned home, his health did not improve. When the fever got worse, Dorothea and Jacob were worried this would be the end. Jacob stayed by his brother's bedside all night long and through the next day. At times, the fever made William think that Jacob was not his brother, but a painting. At other times, William was clear-headed. Just 2 hours before he died, William took one of his favorite stories. Then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on December 16th, 1859, William died. His body was laid in his study. Jacob kept coming to the room to look at his brother and best friend he would never see again. For a while, all of William's books and papers were kept just as he had left them so that a painter could record William's study. Would Jacob be able to go on without his beloved William? They were famous as the brothers Grimm, after all. Berlin newspapers reported that when Jacob was alone in the house, he spent his time looking for William. But this was not true. Jacob continued to live and work just as he had before the death. Jacob finished William's last project for him. Jacob also sent the publisher the second piece of the dictionary, which William had finished. It went up to the letter D. Jacob then set to work on the next 2 volumes of the dictionary. In the fall, Jacob took a trip to the mountains. The fresh air and travel seemed at first to be good for him, but when he returned home, he caught a cold, which soon developed into a more serious illness. It was probably pneumonia. One Saturday afternoon in September, Jacob was sitting with his niece, Auguste, when he suffered a stroke. Jacob's right arm couldn't move, and he could no longer speak. The next day, Jacob's heart beat so wildly, Auguste thought it might explode. At one point, Jacob looked steadily at a photograph of William, and then, just after 10 o'clock in the evening on September 20th, 1863, Jacob died. Many people attended Jacob's funeral. Journals and newspapers published articles about his life. In later years, people would argue over which of the brothers was the greater scholar. However, today we remember Jacob and William Grimm most for their fairy tales. The fairy tales live on because they teach us to see the world differently. There are dragons and witches in different times, but there are also beautiful princesses and brave princes, daring quests, and happily ever afters. Next to the Bible, Children's and Household Tales is one of the most widely read books in Germany. But Jacob and William didn't just preserve these fairy tales for the German people. They did so for the world. Grimm's fairy tales have been translated into more than 160 different languages and have been illustrated by hundreds of artists. They have also been adapted into countless movies, plays, and television shows. William Grimm once wrote, In the fairy tales, a world of magic is opened up before us, one which still exists among us in secret forests, in underground caves, and in the deepest sea, and is still visible to children. The work of the brothers Grimm certainly has earned its place in the hearts and on the bookshelves of children around the world. So that concludes this book. We're going to have to pick another one for tomorrow.